Hey guys, welcome back.
Hello.
How was everyone's lunch or work?
Another meeting.
Or work. Uh,
I was quizzing my colleagues on the PMP quizzes.
what was it, Nicholas?
That was Carlos. I was saying I was just quizzing some of my colleagues with the quizzes that we're taking, seeing how much they knew about PMP.
Ah, nice, nice. Always a good icebreaker.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we'll give it a few minutes for folks to join and we'll hop back in. Before we get going, any questions that came to mind during break or anything we want us to circle back on? All right. Let me share my screen now. Um, all right. Share screen. Here we go. So this is where we finished off before we went on lunch break. Now, just for orientation, it seems like these are random topics put together, but they're all under the heading of, for the sessions we covered today, under empowering team members and stakeholders. So these are things that you can do. These are the deliverables and tools. We talked about, decisions. We talked in length about estimates. And remember in our first session, I told you that, we're going to cover these guys, but we kind of went over it a little bit last week. And we'll go over some of that today as well. And so that's how these topics are organized. So after we complete empower team members and stakeholders, we'll then jump into train team members and stakeholders. So let's jump back into it. So, all right, just a quick review for earned value analysis. So for earned value, we're trying to figure out how well are we in terms of two primary things. One is cost and another is schedule. Those are the two things that we look into. Three of the values that you need to figure out. Plan value, this is the budgeted cost. Earned value is actually the actual work that was done, what was completed, right? The actual work. So let's say that plan value is we're going to complete one story of a building every month. But let's say in month one, you only finished half of the story or the floor, then your plan value is one, but your earned value is just half. Does that make sense? So earned value is what did you actually complete? And actual cost is how much did you spend to complete that? So these are the three main things that you have to pay attention to when talking about earned value analysis. Again, for the test, they're going to throw out a whole bunch of different terminologies and given numbers that don't necessarily pertain to earned value. So you want to, one of the main things that you need to get comfortable with before taking the test is separating signal from noise. So for earned value, signal is planned value, earned value, and actual cost. Noise would be, say, anything around communication channels, anything around risk, anything around contracts, Anything that's outside of these three would be noise, but they craft it in such a way that you're like, yeah, I need to consider that. So as you go through the test questions, you'll soon start to get better at separating signal from noise. So for earned value, signal would be planned value, again, how much you budgeted, earned value, what was the actual amount of work completed, and AC, actual cost, is how much did you actually spend. And these are some of the calculations that we talked about. Again, if you're looking at if something is over or under, be it cost or schedule, you're talking about variance. If you're talking about performance or efficiency, you're talking about index. And for both variance and index, you're looking at cost and schedule. So again, it's important to, again, the tricks are look at the operation. If they're talking about subtracting, you're in the variance world. And if they're talking about money, it's cost. If they're talking about time, it's schedule. For index, if they're looking at efficiency or performance, it's about money, it's CPI, cost performance index. And if it's about time, schedule, you're in SPI, schedule performance index. So Michelle will have some exercises for you to actually do some of the math, but for now, suffice it to say that these are the main concepts around earned value analysis. All right. Moving along. Another thing that you need to consider is how to evaluate task accountability. We won't go into the details of work breakdown structure today or the work packages. When we get to cost management, we'll have a lot more slides that show the different iterations and also how things add up in terms of the smallest level all the way up to the entire project plan. So I have a slide for that once we start talking about cost. But for today, suffice it to say that when you have a project, the work breakdown structure, let's say, for example, let's stick with a 3-bed, 2-bath that we talked about, house that we talked about this morning. So a work breakdown structure would then start dividing those in different areas. A simple example would be, okay, let's talk about the different areas in the house. So you have the kitchen, the living room, the dining room, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, right? You guys still with me? So that's the first layer. So then when you get to the kitchen, then you can say, all right, the cabinets, refrigerator, oven, stove, things like that. So these are things that you need to install. So every layer, you're breaking it down into eventually a task. So write this down for the test. The rule of thumb is you want to break things down at a task level, considering what's called the 880 rule. And 880 means the smallest task or should be a duration of 8 hours, and the longest task should be around 80 hours. So it's called the 880 rule. So as you break down the task, when you get to the lowest level, you shouldn't have any tasks that are more than 80 hours or 2 weeks. And also, you shouldn't have any tasks that are smaller than 8 hours or roughly 1 day. So those are things that you need to consider when you're talking about the work breakdown structure. We won't be able to finish the agile stuff today, but we'll start next Friday. I think slides 122, somewhere thereabouts, 120, starts to talk about agile, but we'll start that next week. So we'll package all of the agile stuff so your brain isn't jumping around with waterfall and agile. So, all right. Another thing to consider, how to determine and bestow levels of decision-making authority. So in order for a project to be successful, the team members must have their assigned tasks. And in order for those tasks to be done in the best way possible, you need to provide the team members with some level of authority, right? To make decisions as to how to carry out the task. A lot of times projects fail miserably when you have a project manager that is a micromanager and wants to dictate how every single step is done. Now, let me turn to you guys and ask a question. What happens when a project manager or a project lead starts to micromanage all of the work? What typically happens?
Slow down.
What was it, Cole?
Oh, I think somebody else said it, but they took the words out of my mouth. Slow down. The work starts to slow down.
Slow down. Yep, absolutely. So it slows down because you become the bottleneck, right? If there's a decision point, no one's going to pull the trigger. They're going to wait for you to make that decision. What else happens when you begin to micromanage and do not provide decision-making authority to your team members?
You start to lose the you start to lose the team. Basically, they start feeling like the work is not worthwhile. You don't trust them. It stifles communication. There's a lot of negative that happens to your project.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's right, Ross. And Jane, I'll pull you into this conversation. For marketing, it's very fast paced, right? There's a lot of decisions that you have to do almost simultaneously. Different folks are working on different areas. What happens if the project manager takes that decision-making authority away from folks on the marketing side?
Well, I think it's going to do the slowdown, as you mentioned, right? Because people
Right.
do tend to, within our functional area, work pretty independently, and you've got your subject
Right.
matter experts.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to tell, our creative team how to do their job.
Right. Absolutely. And Steve Jobs said it best. He said, we hire smart people, ideally smarter than us, and we get out of their way, right? Because the reason you brought them on is they're the best person for that body of work. Now, there's a temptation that I see, especially for technical PMs, who, let's say in their previous life, they were a coder, programmer. If there's a problem, they want to jump in and fix it and do it, right? For that body of work. Like, screw it. I know SQL better than you, so let me just jump in. Like, back away, Cole. I got this. I got this. So what happens when a project manager jumps in and does that?
They are burning themselves out. They should not be
Burn?
doing that.
Yep.
That's why.
Absolutely. They burn themselves out.
I think it could be disruptive, right? To kind of insert yourself somewhere, especially around development.
Yep. Very disruptive. And another one is, if you're doing that work, who's doing your work, right? Because unless you figured out how to break the laws of physics, you can only be at one place at one time. You can only be doing one task at a time. So if you're working on, let's say, going back to Jane, you've all of a sudden decided, you know what, I'll do that banner myself. Or, then you're not managing the entire project. You're working on the banner. Or if you decide, you know what, I'll just work on this query myself. Well, who's paying attention to the communication? Who's paying attention to the risk? Who's paying attention to communicating to your project sponsors if you're doing that? So it's very important that you provide the authority. And I usually get brought in when projects aren't doing too well, and I need to kind of help put things back on track. And what I've noticed, project managers or leaders or operational leaders, for that matter, when I say, what I've noticed is the team is always waiting for you to make the decision. Maybe it would be best to allow them to fail forward, right? Give them the opportunity to call the shots. And if they do make a mistake, learn from it and fail forward. And the response I usually get is, well, I'm sorry, Ian, I'm just a perfectionist, and also we don't have a lot of time to go through all these iterations. We need to get it done the right way the first time. So that's why I'm rolling my sleeves up and I'm jumping in the trenches. So all great sound bites, but what's not being told is that the leader doesn't trust their team members, right? That's the unspoken part of all this. So as a project manager, if you have doubts about your a specific team member's capabilities, then there are different ways to handle that. We'll talk about training here in a little bit. Maybe you need to send them to training, or maybe you need mentorship, or maybe you need a coach, or maybe you need someone to guide them a little bit. But the worst thing that you could do is to usurp that authority to make decisions. And at that point, they're just following things blindly. All right. Oh yeah, Jane, thanks so much. We're all right. Yes. The calendar should reflect that. If not, we'll definitely have it taken out of the schedule. But yes, we're definitely off on Labor Day. Thank you so much. So cool. So, all right. So that's decision-making authority. Now let's switch gears, and the next few slides are going to talk about training team members and stakeholders. So in terms of training, we have all these things that we need to figure out. As you can see, a lot of these things these ideas are pretty intuitive. So we're going to go a little faster than this morning, where we had to break down the estimating techniques, the earned value analysis. So what you'll find over the next 10, well, now 9.5 sessions is that there are times where we're going to go really slow if it's a new topic, right? And also you don't use it in your day-to-day. But if there are things that are a bit intuitive, we're going to go quicker, so we'll have more time to devote to novel ideas that are presented here in the PMBOK. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. Okay, so let's dive in one by one. All right. I'd love to get your thoughts about these words. So when you hear the word training versus coaching, what comes to mind? When you hear training, what usually comes to mind for you guys?
Teaching a
Kind of like what
skill.
we're doing now. Training.
Say it one more time.
It's kind of like what we're doing now. Training, as in like a class, or learning something new, going to conferences.
Yep, absolutely. And that was Julius, right? Yeah. And Julius, when you hear the word coaching, what comes to mind?
Coaching is like someone that is like your mentor, manager, or even somebody else to help you achieve your goal.
Mhm.
Kind of like you want to do this, but you're struggling. So you have a mentor, you have a manager, or you have that other person that helps you. Hey, try using this, or here are some tips for what you want to achieve.
Absolutely. That I couldn't have said it better. So thank you, Julius. So for the test, When you hear the word training, write down specific. When you hear the word coaching, write down generic. So training pertains to a specific knowledge or skill. Coaching pertains more to a generic or general either topic or area or domain. So training is very specific. So for example, as Julius pointed out, this PMP bootcamp is a very specific training, right? We are preparing you to pass this PMP test. That it couldn't be more specific than that. However, what makes this program unique is that we also do a little bit of coaching where we go through, okay, how do you actually go about and deal with difficult team members? How do you actually run a good meeting? How do you actually run retrospectives, right? So when you go zoom out a little bit more, then you're in the realm of coaching. So let's say, for example, that you're training, let's say you want to run a marathon. Do you get a trainer or a coach? I know the words are used interchangeably, you know, outside of this class, but for the purposes of the test, in that particular scenario, do you get a trainer or a coach? Let me see, someone. Trainer, yes, absolutely. And Jane, why did you say trainer?
I think it's so specific, right?
Right.
So if I want to just increase or improve my overall health, I think I get a coach.
You get a coach.
But for a marathon specific event, right?
Absolutely. And also for the marathon, for those of you who have trained for marathons, you create a goal as to what your ultimate pace will be, right? If you're trying to shoot for single digits, like a 9-minute mile, or if you're trying to shoot for more double digits, maybe 12, 13-minute mile. And then, you know, wherever you're at on your baseline, you work your way down, right? And to get to that, whatever it is your ideal number is. And then you really focus on pacing, you focus on the diet, the rest, and all of that. So it's very specific in terms of the goal. And you're absolutely right. Coaching for the test is more along the lines of being more well-rounded. And also the relationships are more long-term. And the questions are more generic. So again, for the test, training specific, coaching generic. And we also have these folks that are kind of ad hoc, right? Like you call them when you need them. Whereas a trainer, it's very specific hours, right? We're meeting MWF at 4:30, right? We're going to be doing these sessions to help you get there. So one of the things that's also thrown in that's related to this, but it's not on the slides here, is the concept of mentor. So what do you guys think of when you hear the word mentor?
I look at it as like between training and coaching, you are training, but you're not able to succeed. That's where mentor comes in and tries to help you get through the course or complete the training.
Okay, that's really good, Maxi. Yep. Anyone else? What do you guys think? And there's no right or wrong answer to this. When you hear the word mentor, for example, I say, "Hey guys, Brittany is my mentor." What comes to mind?
Does a mentor guide you? Is that, I don't know, when I think of a mentor, I think of someone that kind of guides you, gives you advice.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else?
I think as somebody who, you know, you're sort of sitting at their feet. That's an old expression, learning at their feet. Somebody that does the job, somebody that is an expert in the field, somebody that is imparting their experience to you. You're not just learning what they're training, you're learning how they do it and what they've succeeded in at this point. And they mentor you along. It's not a short, maybe like a journeyman, you're picking up a trade. You have a mentor and you're learning a skill that you're going to use to earn a living.
That's absolutely right. And Charisse nailed it too. In the comments, she said strategic guidance, right? Trainer is tactical guidance. Does that make sense? So trainer is tactical. Mentorship is strategic. And coaching is more overall, right? So those are three terms that I want you to get comfortable with. Again, mentor is something that I haven't seen show up on the test, but in the book they mentioned mentor as well. So I wanted to throw it in here. Now, if you guys remember from our first session, I mentioned that I do try to bring in guest speakers to help us with certain areas, certain topics, experts in their field that you guys can ask questions and hopefully learn from, right? And so one of the areas that you guys brought up was you wanted to learn a little bit more about communicating and also collaborating with other team members, right? Sounds about right? Yes, no? Okay. Blink twice. Now, I do have someone that I hope that you guys will be excited about. His name is Richard Green. And Richard, I met him 2014 to 10 years now. I met him at a TED event. And Richard Green, he is a speaking coach, speech coach, and also now kind of evolved into more of a leadership coach. And his clients include folks you might know, like Princess Diane, Dalai Lama, Bill Clinton, and other leaders throughout the world, and also some celebrities as well. So anyway, I reached out to Richard this week, and I asked if he could come and spare us 30 minutes of his time. Yes, the master of charisma, Ross. That's pretty awesome. You know him. Yep, that is actually him. So anyway, I was trying to pull him in for today's session, but he's at the DNC. And after that, he's at Burning Man, then US Open. So maybe next month we'll be able to have him here and talk to us about communication, collaboration, leadership. And Richard is a good friend, and he just has so much energy. Oh, Google search. Okay. I thought you saw one of his one of his TED Talks has like 1 million plus views. So it's out there on YouTube. So yeah, so I'm trying to lock down some time with Richard Green to come and talk to us. So yeah, so he'll be a great person to talk about, training, coaching, and mentorship. There's another person that I'm trying to nail down, just haven't aligned on schedules. They call him Dr. Love. He was the singing coach. If you guys saw that movie, Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga, what was that movie?
A Star is Born or something, or
Star is Born. Yeah. So when Bradley Cooper needed someone to help him train to sing, he reached out to Roger Love. So Roger is also a friend of mine, and I've been trying to find 30 minutes on his calendar to come, not to teach us how to sing like Bradley Cooper, but also how to find your voice. He has a lot of good techniques that he, well, gets paid a lot of money to share with celebrities and also people in power. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully we can get them here in the next few weeks. So,
Sorry.
oh, cool. Yeah. So these are great people. And for those of you who I don't know if you guys are invited to our all hands meeting for the ITPMO. Have you guys joined that? It's like not once a month, but once a month I bring in a guest speaker. Has anyone attended that? No.
Yes,
Okay.
I attend those, Ian.
Oh, who was that?
Teresa.
Sorry. Oh, Teresa. Were you there, Teresa, this week?
Yes.
Oh, so what did you think about it? First of all, tell the folks who was the guest speaker.
I can't remember his name, but it was Asian fellow,
Andrew
correct?
Yang.
Yes, yes, and he was a campaign. He worked on a lot of campaigns, correct?
He ran for president.
Oh, he did run. He actually because that's what he was talking about the campaign, and then the
Yeah,
hats
yeah.
and what was the hats? Math or
Math,
the
yeah.
yeah. So he was talking about the campaign and the financial structure of it, and how he
Yeah.
used to be more on the corporate end, but he's like
Yeah.
transitioned into
Yeah.
more of, like with the hackers days when you go from like black hat to like gray
Yeah,
hat to
white
white hat.
hat.
Yeah, so now he's like
Yeah.
on the white hat spectrum where he's, a good guy, and explain the whole transition of that, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go. Sorry, I didn't get that one.
아니야. 그거 안에 꼭 집어넣으면 돼, 오히려.
Hold on, let me oh, I can't.
Sorry.
Jin, there you go. Thank you. So how many of you, just by raise of hands, know Andrew Yang? Heard of him? Know him? Okay, cool. So yeah, so he was he was our speaker for this week. And the crazy thing is that he actually said encouraged Dinesh, who's here in our class, to run for president. Like you have it, Dinesh. So
That was awesome. That was pretty funny.
So Andrew, I got to I've been following him for a while, but I met him in person in April. Got to hang out with him and his wife at one of the events, and he was kind enough to share 45 minutes of his time with us. So if you haven't signed up for the all hands, you can actually email Mike Roach, and he can help get you on the distribution list. We have some pretty cool folks that do show up for that. And these are folks that volunteer their time just to share, what led to their success, and just things that we can also utilize in our day to day. One of my favorites was, and I'll try to. He's back now from being in the UK. No, in Europe. Is Nolan Bushnell. Some of you might know him as the founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese. But I invite him to speak for a few times now because he's the only true employer of Steve Jobs. So Steve worked with him at Atari. So the topic that I usually give him is, how do you manage team members that are geniuses, right? So can't think of a bigger genius than Jobs. So he has some great stories to tell. So he just got back, so I'll see if I could get one of the Fridays for him to pop in, and I'll let you know in advance so you guys can think of questions to ask these folks. So cool. All right. So going back. So training and coaching, we talked about, if you have a team member that might need extra training and coaching, things to remember, you know, you have to schedule the training, perform a gap analysis. And gap analysis means, you know, getting a baseline, right? So before you start any training, you want to make sure that you have a baseline. Where are you right now, right? So how much do you know of the subject matter? And then you do another test after the fact, so you can show that, you know, there was some growth in the process. Upskilling certifications. I am a big fan of getting certificates. So even if it's small certificates like Tableau certifications, things that you can do, you know, over 2 weeks or so. The process of getting certifications is very helpful. And, you know, UCLA is very supportive of learning and training. And here's a good one. Diversity of training and coach offerings. So the reason I invite folks outside of the healthcare field is for us to hear voices that we probably, you know, don't hear every day, but also since they're coming from a different industry, they see things differently, right? Their problems might be similar to our problems, you know, dealing with different team members, difficult team members, trying to bring about difficult products, services, but they might have a different way of approaching it. So that's why I try to bring folks who are from different industries to give us a different point of view. All right, so that's training and coaching. Let's jump into what's called T-shaped skills. Okay, so for the test, T-shaped skills talks about, so if you look at the letter T here, right? So at the top, so the one that goes across, this is the top part of the T, that's the breadth of knowledge, or the different variety types of knowledge, things that you know of, right? So you might know a lot about a little about a lot, right? So that's the breadth. So the width of everything that you're really good at. Now, the y-axis, going back to that, or vertical line, is the depth of knowledge, right? So what you want for your team members is to have a good understanding about the project that you're working on, but they need to have an area of expertise. That's your depth of knowledge. Does that make sense? And as much as possible, you want to assign tasks that align not with their breadth of knowledge, but with their depth of knowledge. Does that make sense? So it goes back to what we talked about, wherein you're working at the top of your license. So your specialty, your subject matter expertise, will be along the depth of knowledge and not the breadth of knowledge. Did everyone get that? So as a project manager, you're actually better off being a generalist, right? You know a little bit about all the different functions in the group, in the organization. So you have an idea, right? And the depth of knowledge, you want to lean on your subject matter experts, right? Does that make sense? So for your team members, you want to focus on depth of knowledge. For the project managers, you want to focus on breadth of knowledge, or the expanse of it. So you're a mile wide, but an inch deep if you're a PM. If you're a team member, your subject matter expert, you might be an inch wide, but a mile deep, right? So you know a lot about your own subject matter expertise. Okay. So that's T-shaped skills. Any questions?
Ian, can I interrupt you? So this is actually a question on our quiz, which is, so do we want more I's on our team versus T's if we're the project manager?
So for the project manager, you want them to be more of a generalist, right? But for the team members, as much as possible, you want to have a specialty, so depth of knowledge. Now, the problem, everything has a downside, right? The downside with having everyone that's a specialist is that if someone is sick or is out, you don't have a lot of crossover coverage, right? Versus if you have a team that maybe not really deep in one area, but they know enough to do the work, but they also have experience in, let's say, coding language, right? They might know a little bit of Python, they might know a little bit of SQL, might know also maybe some Tableau or Power BI. They're not experts in any of them, but they know enough to do the work. And if you have folks like that, it's great because they can cover for the team, right? But for the test, it's best that your project manager is a generalist and your team members are specialists. All right. So I actually think I saw Mike. Mike, I have a not really a question, but more of a would love to pick your brain on when you had those DoD type of projects and there was intense scrutiny and filtering of people on the team. Did you guys tend to have more depth of knowledge folks, or did you lean more on kind of more of a jack of all trade?
No, definitely depth of knowledge.
Depth of knowledge. Okay.
Yeah, very keen depth of knowledge in very specific areas. And often the work was split up on a couple of those projects. The actual outcome of it wasn't known by the team in general. They just knew what they were working on and when they had to get it done.
Oh, wow. So how did you deal with coverage, Mike? Let's say you have, I don't know, an assassin that's out because of COVID.
They didn't have any of those projects. So.
But but when we needed, coverage or did the team have enough folks to like limp along, or did that line of work had to stop till the resource could come back or find a replacement?
The line of work would have to stop until they found a replacement until they came back. Yeah, it was not shared. It was very specifically assigned.
Got it. So thanks, Mike. And that is aligned with what PMBOK shares as well. So when you have that depth of knowledge specialist, kind of like the A-Team, right? The movie or the series, if one of them is missing, the others can't really pitch in, or Ocean's 11, depending on which one you like more. So that's the downside of depth of knowledge. So cool.
Right.
All right. Moving along. So required competencies. A lot of times we make do with the resources that we have, right? Like you have a project and you're requesting a resource, and let's say you need someone who is a DBA administrator, and if they're novice, then you make do. But again, for the test, more likely than not, you have a plethora of resources at your disposal, and you're kind of filtering out who's best for your project. So again, for the test, try not to put your work hat on and put on the PMI hat. Like, okay, what happens in PMI land? In PMI land, you have access to a vast amount of resources, and you need to filter through and find folks that have the right amount of competencies to do the work. And competencies includes knowledge, skill, and other attributes. Before, the A stood for attitude, right? The right attitude. So now they've expanded it to say other attributes. So what's the difference between knowledge and skills? When you hear someone say, oh, Jade is very knowledgeable.
What they
Because
know
the-
versus what they can do.
What they know versus what they can do. Perfectly said, Brittany. And when I was working on the floors in either ED or ICU, especially the night shift, you want people who are more skillful than knowledgeable. And it doesn't, folks who, again, working in trauma, if you ask them every step of the way, why did you use this tourniquet versus that tourniquet? Why did you go with this protocol versus that protocol? Or why did you titrate this much versus that much? The skillful nurse or doctor might not be able to tell you exactly why. They just know. They've done it so many times. And if they sit down, they can eventually give you an answer. But they might not know it off the top of their head. And a lot of times this is because they learn in a tactile manner, meaning they assimilate knowledge by doing, right? So the doers, people that do, especially with your hands, you tend to focus on the technique, the dexterity, the sequence of events, and not necessarily on all of the whys, the underlying reasons behind that. Knowledgeable folks, they're they're great for day shift when I was working the ER, because when you have administration and management, walking around the hospital, they're the ones that love to ask the why questions. Why are we here? Why did you do that? Why did you do this? For those scenarios, you want the knowledgeable folks, folks that, oh yeah, our ratios are like this, and therefore we did that. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your most knowledgeable resource is your most skillful resource. And also your most skillful resource might not be your most knowledgeable resource. And the reason I bring this up, because it ties into the topic we talked about earlier around training and coaching. Your best coder might not be the best mentor, coach, or trainer for your new coder. Because a lot of times they might not even be able to truly tell you why they use this type of code versus that type of code. They just know, they just do. Conversely, your most knowledgeable person, let's stick with coding, they might understand all the philosophies and all the different approaches and nuances, but they might not be the best in terms of troubleshooting issues with code. But you want that knowledgeable person to be the mentor, to be the trainer. Does that make sense? So I've seen this play out over and over again in hospitals, wherein the best neurosurgeon is promoted to the director of, neurosurgery. Well, guess what? Those skill sets are very different, right? The ability to take out a tumor or stop a bleed is very different than training your novice attending physicians on neurosurgery, or dealing with the politics of getting more budget, or having to deal with negotiating nurses for your unit, or for those hours that you have high volumes, right? So just because you have someone that is very skilled, they might not be the best one to do training or mentorship. Does that make sense? So be mindful of that when you're partnering someone that's new to your group to someone that might be able to teach or mentor. Another thing too is when we're talking about training is to be mindful not just of the knowledge, the skills, and other attributes that are required, but also be mindful of the business, the culture, like everything around what we're trying to do. And especially nowadays, it's more nuanced when you're trying to train people a certain way. I would argue, and Mike, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like back in maybe the 80s and 90s, you can get away with being an absolutely amazing insert profession here, right? Lawyer, engineer, programmer. Even if your attitude, let's say, had much to be desired, people will put up with you because you're just an absolutely amazing lawyer, for example, or absolutely amazing surgeon, or absolutely amazing, again, insert whatever. Nowadays,
Why
oh, go
are
ahead,
you
Mike.
asking me this question?
Just because you've experienced a lot of teams.
Right. What I will say to that is, it was indeed true, but it wasn't better. What I mean by that is, over the years and over learnings, I think culture in general and the American workforce more specifically have learned that there are acceptable ways to be and to work at work. And no matter where you are on the echelon, that's expected of us to do that. There was a time at which, there was a time at which that it was more important for you to be skilled than to be somebody that people wanted to work with. Now you need to bring more to the table where you also want to be somebody that people want to work with. And yeah, there were some real bullies in the workplace at one point that got away with things they should never have gotten away with. And for the good, we don't accept that anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the word that captures it is bullying, right? That um and you're right, Mike. It's definitely a cultural thing, and also the changes in times, because um my kids, for example, bullying is a big thing in school, especially in high school. And they were asking me the other night, it's like, how about you? Did you have bullying in your school when you were in high school? And I said it was like lunch. Like you just expected it. It was part of being high school. Like part of surviving high school is surviving those bullies. And it's almost like the universe assigns a bully per class. So, but nowadays that's a that's a big no-no. Yeah, you cannot be bullying people and get away with it in this day and age. So thankfully, that has also translated into the workplace.
Freshman Friday, somebody just posted. Yes, Freshman Friday.
Freshman Friday. And I'll segue for 30 seconds, and Mike knows this well. In my case, my youngest daughter is maybe 80 pounds soaking wet. She's just itsy bitsy. She's on the track field, really small. But she's the bully in the group, not physically, but she does these mental jujitsu with folks in her class, and then they cry. And then they go to the principal. And and the folks that she makes cry are like, twice her size, like 6-foot boys that she would whisper something in their ear during recess, and and then she would pretend to be this like, oh, I didn't say that. Why would I say that? And so this
I'm just going to insert so that everyone understands what Ian isn't saying is his daughter is absolutely brilliant, like scary smart brilliant, and she can get away with it because she is so clever. So clever.
Yeah, we called her Wednesday from the show on Netflix. She's definitely a Wednesday. But what I'm trying to teach her is that even though you might think you're getting away with these things, and even though a lot of times it's brought about by quote unquote some bully in school that's picking on her friend on the track team, then she kind of is fighting on behalf of this person. It's still not acceptable. So as you're looking at bringing on onboarding team members, it has definitely shifted from just focusing on what you know and what you can do to how well will you fit into the existing group and to the existing culture of the organization. Because otherwise, if you don't fit in, even though you might be brilliant, you know a lot, you can do a lot, you will eventually transition. And when you do, I think the estimates now is about a third of your salary. The cost it takes to, let's say, for example, Brian quits tomorrow. It takes about a third of Brian's salary in order to find, recruit, and onboard someone to replace him. So the fit, the culture truly is, it went from being the main focus of HR to now the main focus of finance, because it's truly a bottom line net negative every time you have transition. So, all right. Okay, so these are pretty self-explanatory elements of training. Everyone knows what an instructor-led classroom is. That's what we're doing here. Virtual classrooms, again, what we're doing here. Self-paced e-learning. This is when you guys log into the PMP training.com where you have the questions that you go through yourself. Document reviews, once we have the documents uploaded to Google Classroom, that's document reviews. Interactive simulation. I'm sure everyone here has done an interactive simulation class. Raise your hand if you have. Like one of those, yep, you go through and they have, test case scenarios and all of that. And of course, on-the-job training where you're physically doing the job or internship. All right. Any questions? I went through that quickly. Good, perfect. Training options, again, version 7 was created pre-COVID. So this seemed like a novel thing to teach, but now, almost everything is virtual, almost everything is self-paced, and we talked about the document reviews already. All right. Training costs and schedule. For the test, one thing that you want to be mindful of is, do you have, again, in PMI land, there's enough money to cross-train everyone. So for the test, you want to make sure that you have budget for cross-training, right? So when someone is out, the project doesn't suffer, there's someone that can fill in. So for the test, make sure that you have budget and allocation for cross-training, right? And so part of the project budget, so we talked about the calendar of training dates and locations. Again, now that's mostly virtual. Published schedule, yep. Mechanism. Okay, everything here is pretty self-explanatory. All right. So we talked about pairing and coaching just a few minutes ago. Again, the pairing is not with the one that can do the job the best, but someone that's open to coaching and mentorship, and also a good fit for the individual. I have one more story and then we'll go on break. When I first started out I transferred from Chicago to California. and I was working at St. Jude here in Orange. So like, I don't know, early 2000s. And the ER manager thought it would be funny, not logical, but funny, to partner me, this novice nurse, with someone who had severe PTSD, who just came back from war and was an insanely good trauma nurse, just absolutely insane. Like the things he did, in the battlefield, I learned so much from him. But oh my God, it was as if he never left the battlefield. He would yell for me from across the ER with his booming voice. And to this day, if my wife yells at me, I still get the the jitters. And Mike, his name was actually Michael. His name was Michael Knapp with a K. And he meant well, but his methods were so, well, war related, and that traumatized me. And the ER manager at the time just thought it would be funny to see what would happen if we gave Matt a green nurse. And that so happened to be me. So that's the worst example of a pairing. And that's why I spend a lot of time on this, because that was 24 years ago. And I'm still processing the trauma from 6 months of working with this vet in the ER. So make sure that, hopefully as you're pairing folks for coaching, that they don't get PTSD in the process. All right. With that, it's 3:02. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back at 3:12.
Let me hit it. Oh yeah. No, thank God. What's that? Let's see. It's right here. I was confused. I thought this was Linda's car, but I just realized this is her car. They said she's being a Karen. So look, she hit this. So I guess Grandma was coming down this street, and Linda was right here. So when you're coming down this way, at the I don't know if you remember, but here at the bottom, here at the end, I think there's a school zone right here. But anyways, you make a U-turn, and then you can come back this way. So I think that's what she was doing. I think she was gonna go this way, and then she was gonna make a U-turn, and because it's
All right, team, welcome back.
slow, she she didn't know that my mom was gonna make a U-turn like this. So I think she went like this, try to go around and speed up. So then when grandma started trying to get a U-turn, she started going like this. And hit her real hard. But the funny thing is that the Karen says, I wasn't going fast, but I'm like, if you were going fast, there's no way you make
Let's actually do just 8 minutes. We'll do an 8-minute breakout session. And what we'll talk about in our breakout session is coaches, mentors, or trainers that we've had in the past, and any lessons that you've been able to use that's still helpful for you today. So if you have any example of trainers, mentors, or coaches that have helped you, and what were the lessons that you still carry today. So let me see how I can do the breakout rooms. Go. Need 2 seconds. What happened to my breakout room? Oh, I'm not the host. 1 second. Darn it. Oh, here we go. Claim host. Just 2 seconds. Just need to enter the key. Do you guys have any questions about the topic for the breakout? Pretty self-explanatory. Cool. Okay. 991289. Claim. All right. So let's just do 8 minutes and we'll come back. How was the size earlier? I think we had 4 to 5. Was that good? Okay, we'll do 4 to 5 again. All right, welcome back. Let's give it a second for folks to join. Cool. So now that folks are back, anyone want to share any lessons, anything that you guys talked about that might be helpful for the group or entertaining? Don't be shy.
I think in our group, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and I do remember something very specific, which is listen more, right? Like you can't do enough listening. So I think because, we're so action or results oriented, I can get ahead of myself. So that's something I have to remind myself to do.
That is so true. And I am very guilty of that, Jane. When someone is telling me their story, I'm creating a project plan in my head. And all they need is for me to shut up and listen. And I'm so guilty of that. So thanks for the reminder. Awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think in our group we were talking about just the mentorship in general and kind of how my view on it is kind of like the following someone up the mountain, right? Who has had the experience and has kind of laid the foundational footsteps for you. And Gilbert had brought up that he had followed somebody in a different business industry, but even just following somebody that had the same logic and thought process through problems like helped him evaluate and move through things faster than he would. And I feel like that's a part of, at least from my perspective, as a leadership component, right? How do I make sure when I take the step from following someone else that I'm giving that footprint to somebody behind me to let them see what the option is for them to move forward and follow guidance, right? I think that's interesting.
Very elegantly said, Christopher. Footprints that you leave behind is a guide for those behind you. That's amazing. Awesome. One more. You can do it.
I'll just go. I joined my room a little late, but I can share that I was privileged to work for one of the executive directors, and I learned a lot from her for basically how you recruit people for a big project. And believe me or not, this came up just recently also in some other learning where they were saying that some people, we need to hire personalities rather than just skills. And that is what I learned with her because it was a meaningful use project. If you know that CMC came when we all were converting to electronic medical record, and we were getting this seed money. So we had like really right candidates with good skills, but they did not have personalities. But we needed for this project good personalities as well. So not necessarily that you will hire that PhD level skilled person over who cannot even talk in the meetings over a person who is just an undergraduate and will be able to take on that lead on the project. So yeah, mentors to make a
Thanks,
difference.
Meenakshi, for sharing that. One of the things I was sharing in my group, which I found myself doing as well, you probably have someone that you look up to, right? In your own personal, professional life. And a lot of times you would say, in my case, way back when, her name was Helen McPhee. And she was just this very calm. She was VP of quality at St. Joseph Hospital way back when. And she would go from meeting to meeting and just have this calm demeanor, like nothing fazed her. So as a group, we would have what we call WWHD. What would Helen do? And I found that to be super helpful, and one of our folks in the breakouts also shared that they would ask themselves, what would my mentor do? And if you kind of think through that, it kind of at least guides you in the right way, or at a bare minimum, much better than what you would say if your emotions are running high or about to freak out. What would insert mentor's name here? I thought that was very helpful as well. So cool. Thank you guys for participating in that. Now let's get back to the final segment of module number 1. We're almost there, guys. I think it's we have 126, I believe. So we're almost there. So certifications, as I said, there are a ton of certifications, you know, for PMI, there's PMP, there's others as well. It's for me, just going through the process of learning, getting certified, getting new skills, even if it's not something that might be helpful for your career, like for my daughters, I encourage them to get their CPR card, right? So it's something that they have, and my eldest wants to become a lifeguard, a junior lifeguard at Huntington Beach. So and anything that requires you to grow from where you are right now, your baseline, right, to where you will be after, I think is a worthwhile endeavor. So I highly encourage you, you know, after after the PFP, because this is a beast in and of itself. Find something that would excite you. Find something that would make you better, even if it's you know, something small like French cooking lessons, or join a rowing group and become, you know, a novice level there. Whatever whatever it might be for you, it's the process of transforming into something better at a specific area. For me, I find brings me a lot of joy, and I encourage you guys to try it out as well. All right. So yeah, baseline, we talked about that. Always do a baseline. I've seen folks who are, you know, really keen on training, but they don't, like, even at the gym, like they would say, hey man, yeah, my resting heart rate is 58 right now. And I would say, well, what was it last week? What was your baseline? Like, what do you mean? Like, how do you know that's good? Maybe you were 55 last week. Maybe you're trending up. So a data point is just a data point, right? Without a baseline, you don't know if you're trending up or down. So always get a baseline when you're training or when you're acquiring a new skill. All right. So some guidelines for training, awareness, stakeholders. One of the things that I found to be helpful as well is not just communicate training to, let's say, project sponsors or the operational managers, but to celebrate it. So once your team members have completed, you know, a certification or a training, or they're now, you know, have SQL level 2, celebrate it. It could just be, you know, taking 2 minutes out of the next meeting to highlight Christopher for passing the test. Or if you're close by, you know, go out for lunch. For me, I think celebrating is a huge part of encouraging not just the person who accomplished something, but also the folks around them. Like, oh wow, they're celebrating growth in this organization. I should probably, you know, look at something that I would want to grow into as well. So that's something I would recommend. And again, it's something that you can easily do, you know, starting next week. Just celebrate small wins around training and growth. All right, moving on to the next topic, engage and support virtual teams. We're going to go pretty quickly because you guys know how to do this. Again, before, the idea of virtual teams back in 2018 was still kind of new, but now it's just called teams, right? No longer virtual teams, just teams. So things you have to learn in this segment. Collaboration technology, we know that. Engagement assessments, we'll talk about that. Project resource calendar, we talked about this last time. Again, for the test, it's not just when the folks are available, but also when they're not available. And also coverage, because again, PMI land, there's enough people to cover. Communication, all right. So collaboration technology, again, making sure that everyone can log into the tool. Everyone knows the repository, be it Box, Dropbox, SharePoint, messaging chat boards. You know, if you're using Teams, for example, make sure that everyone can log on to that or can view, you know, the messages. You don't want one team member not to have access. And shared task boards like the one we talked about, like a Kanban board. All right. Virtual team member needs. I think it's harder to inspire, motivate, and keep virtual team members engaged than it is being in person. Would you guys agree? Right, just there's something about proximity, right? Just being close to another human being, just around the office, that gives you a feeling of shared purpose, shared goals. But when you're in a virtual setting, the project manager has to work twice as hard to just reiterate, hey guys, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and start calling out folks who are doing a good job to encourage them to lean forward more and participate more, because it's so hard to keep people engaged in a virtual setting. So these are the things that you need to reiterate: shared goal, clear purpose, why are we doing this? And again, clarity on roles and expectation, who's doing what. And I would add, celebrate successes once tasks are completed. All right, virtual team member engagement, team dynamics, we talked about that earlier. Transparency, right? Being able to talk about things that are not going too well, just as well as we talk about you know, wins. Accountability, who's doing what, right? And okay, let's do some review here. Parsa, do you still remember Racy?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so let's do a quick review. What do the letters stand for? R.
Sorry.
No
I
worries.
have my notes.
Take your time. Anyone want to call a friend? So pick someone in the group to answer letter R.
Let's see. Let's do Brian.
Brian, what's R?
Responsible person that
Respons-
actually does the work.
All right. A, who wants to volunteer for A?
Accountable.
Accountable. And what does that mean?
Somebody who takes responsibility.
The person who owns,
Owns,
right? Owns. So for the test, how many people are accountable for a task?
One.
One. How many people are accountable for the project?
One.
One. Yep. So for the test, accountable is always one. Now you can have multiple people responsible, right? But accountable is always one. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Attention to effective communication. How do you know when communication isn't going well in your group, in your team?
When no one's talking or everybody's talking at the same time, or everybody's talking about something else than the topic.
That is the most succinct way of putting it. I ought you write that down. When no one is talking or everyone is talking. That's absolutely right. Or they're talking about something else. Very true. And I call it, well, it wasn't me, it was Stephen Covey. He calls it the dialogue of the deaf. And what this is when people are talking and waiting to talk, not to respond to what you said, but to build up their own point of view. So when they're silent, they're not listening. They're formulating their responses. So he calls it the dialogue of the deaf. So true communication happens when you actually are trying to, the best of your ability, understand what the other person is saying. And in this day and age, that includes not looking at your phone, right? This is something for those of you who have teenagers, you would understand that this is the hardest thing in the world to do. Get them to put down their phones and look up while I'm talking to you. I can hear you, Dad. I know you can hear me, but you're not paying attention. So it's the same thing for projects. You might be able to hear them, but you need to provide that attention and that focus. And this was something that going back to Helen, Helen McPhee, that was her name, is her name. What Helen would do really well was when you talk to her, she would, this was circa 2002, maybe 2004, somewhere there, 2005. So we didn't have the iPhone yet. But what she would do is she would actually swivel from facing her computer if you walk into her room, and swivel her chair to face you. And she would have a yellow notepad, and she would have a pen in hand, and she would say, you know, Oscar, how can I help you? And that attention, that, you know, be it 2 minutes, 5 minutes, or 10 minutes of just 100% on you, just left such an impression on people, myself included. Because for those few minutes, it's like the world just fades in the background, and the attention of Helen is just on you. And there was something so calming and reassuring about that experience. So if you guys can give that gift to your team members or to your spouse or kids, to anyone you're talking to, that full attention, which is so hard to do, right? And just stopping what you're doing, you know, take out your AirPods, stop Spotify for a second, and just listen. Just focus and listen. And
Was she
more
like a
often,
therapist?
what was it?
Was she like a therapist in her off hours?
Was she a therapist?
That gave me therapist vibes. The yellow binder turning
Yeah.
around.
She was
Tell me what's on your
a
mind.
pharmacist by training. Yeah, she rose up the ranks through pharmacy and found her way to quality control. But yeah, she was a VP of quality. And just that, oh my God, you're listening to me. I feel that if we provide that attention to our team members or to our loved ones in our personal time, 90% of the time, that's all that they need. Because people that come to you with problems, they've also thought about possible solutions, right? And all you need to do is to be there for the most part and have them work it out. And if you just ask simple follow-ups like, that sounds interesting. Tell me more about why you're thinking of going with option number 1. Okay, how is that better than option number 2? Have you thought about any risk associated with doing option number 3? More often than not, they will find their way. They just need you to be there. Give them your attention, and you don't. Yeah, here I think it was it you, Jane? Someone said that you're listening and you're trying to come up with an answer when that's really not what they wanted. Who was that? I apologize. Who said that earlier? It was from the breakout. But anyway, it is so true. A lot of times the people you're talking to, they just want someone to be there to affirm that, you know, they're kind of going in the right path. And if we can provide that grace and space to other people, again, 2 minutes, 5 minutes of just unadulterated attention. It is so rare, and it stays with you. So, and it's for free. That's the cool part, because you're listening, but most of the time we're all guilty of half listening, right? you're you're on a Zoom, for example, and you're kind of listening, but you're also looking at the pings and the notifications and things that are popping up on your computer. You're not clicking on it, right? You're not engaging, but it's still there. And in your brain, like, oh, what did I miss? What did I miss? So that going back and forth of your attention on one thing and then to another and going back actually takes a lot of mental energy. So yeah, so attention to effective communication is vital. And so perfect. We kind of talked about the effective communication a little earlier, and we talked about it last time, the team charter, right? Where you kind of write down what it is that you want the team to adhere to. And again, for the test, team charter is a formal written document, right? So team charter, formal written document. We talked about retrospectives earlier today as a way to improve communication and visibility, okay? I'm gonna go a little fast until we get to some of the new items. So if you guys want me to double click or go back to a topic, just stop me. All right. We talked about assessments earlier, right? It is very important before you start anything that you do baseline assessments. Also, stakeholder engagements. It is very important that you talk to your stakeholders about how do you want me to engage with you for this project. And the reason I say that is because different stakeholders prefer different ways of engaging with them. There are stakeholders that prefer one-on-one time. There are stakeholders that prefer just a weekly email. That's good enough. There are stakeholders that want to be part of your weekly status report meeting, right? So different stakeholders have different levels of engagement, and don't guess. Reach out and ask them, you know, how do you want me to engage you and communicate with you throughout this project? And remember, we talked about that stakeholder register. It has the names of the stakeholders on the leftmost column. And one of the columns is preferred communication method and frequency. So make sure that you have that captured so you're engaging at the right level. And for the most part, you know, the higher up the person is in the organization, the less they'll be part of the actual meetings, but they'll be part of, they're more on the informed side, right? They get the email updates, they get the reports and engage that way. All right, communication plan. We talked about this earlier, about the different components of the plan. You know, you meet at a certain cadence. You have the notes for that. Tools to track. We talked about the Kanban board earlier. Obviously, you can use Excel spreadsheet, MS Project, or UPlan in our case here. Frequency of status updates, both internal to the team and external. Shared team hours, especially with virtual teams, you might have folks working in different time zones or in different parts of the world, right? So if you have teams, let's say in India or in Europe or Asia, so you want to make sure that there's an overlap at some point where everyone's online. And also preferred communication approaches, right? Is email the best? Is Slack? What are the different ways of communicating with the different team members? All right. Virtual team member engagement. We talked earlier about how to elicit more collaboration amongst a team. And again, for the test, team norms, is team norms formal or informal?
Informal.
Informal. Is it written or not written?
Not written.
Not. Yep, perfect. So we talked earlier about recognizing team formation in virtual environments is difficult. Yep. And what are the things you can do to help with that? We talked about them requiring significant amount of feedback and opportunities to meet in person. Dinesh, Mike, and I were actually talking, I think it was yesterday, about improving engagement with the other UCs with the use of UPlan, our PPM tool. So one of the things that we were brainstorming was doing site visits like we did before with UCI. So I'm super excited to see when we can get that going. So opportunities to meet in person would be amazing. Do you guys still go on site?
Yes.
How often do you guys have to be on site? Cole, I think you're on site a lot, right?
I'm on there every week.
Every week. Oh, wow.
Most days, yes.
Yeah.
Couple
Yeah,
days, couple or three.
Couple
As needed.
as needed. And the reason I ask is Mike, something to think about. It might be good to have like towards the end a cohort lunch or cohort happy hour where we all get to see each other in 3D.
I like that idea. I like that idea a lot.
So we should make it a goal. Well, first of all, let's do a show of hands. Would you guys be interested in having a happy hour towards the end of the cohort? Raise your hand if so. Awesome. Okay, so seems like there's an overwhelming yes to that idea. Does anyone want to volunteer to be the coordinator, happy hour coordinator? I think that's the best title, by the way. Who would want to be the happy hour coordinator for our cohort? Dara, your hand is still up. I wasn't sure if that was from earlier. Are you volunteering to be our coordinator for happy hour?
I didn't lower the hand, but yeah, I can do it.
All right, cool. All right. Round of applause for that.
Seems like a trick. It's like let's see how good you are at project management, really.
With alcohol involved. I think that's a great project. So Adara, yeah, so let me know your thoughts. I'm trying to think of what's the best way to coordinate. Maybe we look at somewhere and like second to the last Friday, somewhere thereabouts. But if you don't mind figuring out, how we can do a poll of what works for folks, and we'll choose the day that works for the most folks, and then we'll I'll make you in charge of, you know, finding the location and all of that. And we'll meet up.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. I think that's the best takeaway from all of these sessions here.
I'll say if anybody's worried about coming into, if it's going to be in Westwood, I can put together a room for us to be able to do the class still digitally, virtually, but in a larger setting.
Oh, nice.
Just let me know. I'm happy to block a room. I just need to know which day as well.
Perfect. So we might even do like the afternoon. For those of you who can come earlier, we can do the afternoon session on site, and then 4:05 we already have tequila shots. That's amazing. Okay, maybe 4:07. Okay, 4:07. Cool. Well, Dara, I'll let you coordinate with Cole and we'll figure it out. Thank you guys for being good sports. All right. Calendar tools, time boxes. So next week, we'll talk a little bit more about agile terminologies, and time boxes is one of them. But here are some of the benefits. You know, it's more focused. People are clear on what's expected of them, and it's easy to keep track of. But all right, variance analysis. Earlier I added 2 slides about EVA, earned value analysis. So that is important to, again, look at the baseline, look at your plan, and look at where are you vis-a-vis your plan, right? Are you on target? Are you lagging behind? Or are you a little bit ahead of schedule? Virtual team best practices. Let's see if there's anything here that we haven't covered. Shared commitment. Yep. Shared commitment versus individual. Makes sense. Okay. Building a shared understanding about a project. Okay. There are 2 things here that I want to discuss that we haven't talked about. The first is the XP metaphor and product box exercise. I think I have a slide for that, but if not, we can come back to it. Project vision, we talked about this earlier, you know, making it super clear. What are we trying to do, right? What is our objective? And how does it align, in our case, with what UCLA is trying to do, right? The strategic goal alignment, so that everyone knows that what we're doing is helpful, right, for the greater good. So that is the project vision. What are we trying to do, and how does it align with the organizational strategic goals? Project charter. Okay, so for the test, we'll talk about this more. Project charter shows up a lot, but for the test, write this down. The project charter formally authorizes. So the key word is authorizes, right? The project to start. It also authorizes the PM to start gathering resources. So another thing for the test, project charter is a high level. So write down high level document that captures the timelines, the scope, resources, risk, things of that nature, but it's high level. So it authorizes the PM to start the project, and it's also a high level document. All right. These are some of the contents. Again, this is not exhaustive, but these are some of the things that you can include. The requirements, description, milestones, if you know them already, financial information, stakeholders, and exit criteria, if needed. All right. Project overview. Again, we talked about how the project overview clearly has to state, why are we doing this, right? What is the objective? What's the problem we're trying to solve, or opportunity that we're trying to take advantage of? And what is the criteria for success? So these are all part of the project overview statement. All right. So how to run the projects, we'll go over this all throughout. again, the different types are traditional or waterfall. This is how we typically do projects. Agile we'll touch on more starting next Friday. And then hybrid is a mixture of both. All right. How was your day? Good. Okay. Kickoff meeting. So when your project has formally started, these are the things that you want to convey to them. Project context, team formation, team alignment. And these are all of the quantitative things that you need. But I would like to add for the kickoff, you need to build excitement, right? The team needs to be excited to do this because again, you're adding to their body of work already. So the most important thing for me in a kickoff is that people are excited to do this project. If you can achieve that, then it's way easier for folks to follow and carry on with all of the other things. I think I have, if you guys have a few more minutes, we can finish module 1 today, or if not, we can pick up with slide number 121 next week. Do you guys have 5 more minutes or need to run? Okay, so let's continue on. Actually, no, I lied. Because the agile ceremonies are slide 117. I'd love to encapsulate this all for you guys starting next week. So this actually is a good place to start, which is coincidentally what I said earlier this morning, that we will stop at agile and continue on. So I guess met expectation. But before we go, I'd love to again get a few volunteers. Anything that you guys picked up today? Anything that stood out? Anything new that you learned, or anything that was reinforced from today's lessons? We'll just do a quick 3 and then we'll adjourn for the day.
I don't know about anybody. Go ahead.
I was just talking estimate.
Estimates, yeah, that was that was a lot. Awesome. Thank you. Glad you guys know estimates now. 2 more and we'll adjourn.
I liked the emphasis on creating the environment. You know, you've got the task, you've got all of these documents, formal and informal, and the processes, but you're also trying to build a collaborative environment where people feel motivated, excited, you just said, to do that's not really ever something I've focused on. You know, you try and get all the paperwork in, you try and make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and you know, and then I kind of think, okay, we've done all this work where, you know, we've got buy-in from all the stakeholders, the sponsor is agreeable, go. Now everybody work hard and let's get it done. Let's get to my favorite part of the project is the closing phase. You know, you're like, ooh, look, we did it. You know, we're on time, or, you know, we're operating, but making that environment, that was, it's kind of a shift in my thinking.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross. And one more. And thanks for folks who also shared on the chat, but we'll have one more and then we'll close out. So Taylor said examples of mentoring, training, and coaching. I enjoyed that breakout as well when we talked about that too. So thanks for sharing that, Taylor. All right, with that, thank you guys for session 2 down. We got 2 down, 8 to go, and a happy hour to be organized. So I'm excited. Thank you guys for sticking around, and we'll make sure that the slides are there for you guys by Monday, and also the recording. And if you need anything, you know where to find us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Take care.